Ms. Cortez Masto, no. Ms. Warren?
No.
Ms. Warren, no. Mr. Sanders?
No.
Mr. Sanders, no. Ms. Smith?
No.
Ms. Smith, no. Mr. Lujan?
No.
Mr. Lujan, no. Mr. Warnock?
No.
Mr. Warnock, no. Mr. Welch?
No.
Mr. Welch, no. Mr. Chairman? Chairman votes aye.
Would the clerk please restate the vote?
Mr. Chairman, the final tally was 14 ayes, 13 nays.
The vote was 14-13. The nomination is reported favorably.
After confirmation hearings for RFK Jr. to be our next Health and Human Services Secretary, the Senate Finance Committee voted on party lines to advance his nomination to the full Senate, where he's expected to be confirmed. There was drama at first, only because one Senate Republican questioned whether or not someone that believes vaccines cause autism in kids is sane enough to run the nation's health.
Cassidy was the one we were watching closely here. Ryan seemed uncertain how he would vote. He voted yes. Do we have any background on his thinking?
Yeah, so right before the committee vote, he tweeted out a statement on the X platform where he said that he had, quote, a very intense conversation with Bobby and the White House over the weekend. And even this morning, he said, I want to thank VP JD, that's JD Vance, specifically for his honest counsel with the serious commitments I've received from the administration and the opportunity to make progress on the issues we agree on, like healthy foods and a pro-American agenda. I will vote yes. And that right there sealed the fate of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He makes it out of the committee by a very tight margin, 14-13.
That counsel that came from the vice president is most likely a public relations way of saying that as soon as Senator Cassidy voiced reservations about confirming Kennedy, the pressure campaign from MAGA shifted into high gear to let him know that considering the health of the country is not something that they're willing to tolerate. Sources to Mediaite said that ultimately any opposition won't matter. They pointed to the political realities, including the threat of primary challengers and the risk of backlash being enough to overcome any reservations Republicans may have. Nothing about the health of Americans. One source close to the Kennedy team said they're bullish he'll survive the opposition by virtue of pressure from Trump and his allies. The overall feeling is that Kennedy will be confirmed. No one wants to go against Trump at this point. And another piled on saying Senate Republicans don't want to start a war with Trump out of the gate. And in case anyone missed that memo, the guy that all these spineless senators are afraid of is basically piggybacking onto one of RFK Jr.'s wild and unqualifying claims by posting 20 years ago, autism in children was 1 in 10,000. Now it's 1 in 34. Wow, something's really wrong. We need Bobby. Thank you. So in other words, this explanation makes sense. And if you don't agree with it, you're in the crosshairs of the president.
There's aluminum in those vaccines, which, operates along the same biological pathways and does the same kind of damage. It's extremely neurotoxic. And then there's other things, lots of other toxics in the vaccines that, could be responsible. There's hundreds and hundreds of scientific studies that looked at it, but nobody ever reports them. And everybody will say, oh, there's no study that shows autism and vaccines are connected. That's just crazy. That's people or not looking at science. So anyway,
but they want to say that. They want to say that. It's
it's just part of the religion.
Yes,
right.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
it really does seem like a religion.
And the heretics have to be burned at the stake. Yes. They have to be humiliated, yes. Silenced, destroyed.
He even had the opportunity to back off of his wild claims in the official setting of confirmation hearings, where evidence and studies are cited, instead of the Joe Rogan show. But he decided to stick to his guns.
Mr. Kennedy, in an interview in July 2023, you stated, quote, I do believe autism does come from vaccines. You talk about the need to be science-based, to get our information, good information to make decisions. What studies have you utilized to come to the conclusion that vaccines cause autism?
I'm happy to sit down with you.
No, please, just answer me that.
Look at the Mawson study, Senator.
The what? Yeah.
Mawson, just look at that study.
Yeah, I will. And that was published.
But I don't want to, I wouldn't rest on a single study.
Right.
And all studies can be
Okay. Don't mean to be rude. I don't have a lot of time.
Just saying
you would not be, I just heard you say you could not be happier if you were proved wrong. Mr. Chairman, I asked to put into the record 16 studies done by scientists and doctors all over the world saying that vaccines do not cause autism. Are you happy?
He knows that none of it actually matters, especially after watching Pete Hegseth be confirmed as the Secretary of Defense. RFK Jr. knows that the less qualified he is, the better chance that he's got. I mean, the pressure came from his fellow Louisianan Clay Higgins, too. RFK is going to run HHS whether you like it or not. We're saving the country, and RFK is part of the formula. So, vote your conscience, Senator, or don't. Either way, we're watching. So after the barrage of threats and promises to end his career, Senator Cassidy went on the floor to try to come up with the reason for his change of heart, other than we're watching you from under the bed.
Now, Mr. Kennedy and the administration reached out seeking to reassure me regarding their commitment to protecting the public health benefit of vaccination. To this end, Mr. Kennedy and the administration committed that he and I would have an unprecedentedly close collaborative working relationship if he is confirmed. Mr. Kennedy has asked for my input into hiring decisions at HHS beyond Senate-confirmed positions, and this aspect of the collaboration will allow us to represent all sides of those folks who are contacting me over this past weekend. He has also committed that he would work within current vaccine approval and safety monitoring systems and not establish parallel systems. CDC will not remove statements on their website pointing out that vaccines do not cause autism. These commitments and my expectation that we can have a great working relationship to make America healthy again is the basis of my support. If Mr. Kennedy is confirmed, I will use my authority as chairman of the Senate Committee with oversight of HHS to rebuff any attempt to remove the public's access to life-saving vaccines without ironclad, causational, scientific evidence that can be accepted and defended before the mainstream scientific community and before Congress.
Good luck getting anyone at HHS to honor all these promises that they tossed at Senator Cassidy for his vote. It's already pretty clear that the White House has no expectations for Congress to exercise any power over anything they do, well, based on their actions over the last couple of weeks in office. You know, the fact that MAGA representatives publicly bullied Cassidy over his first thought to oppose Kennedy, but are pushing this reality that they convinced him to vote for him based on anything else, shows how much they expect Americans to just accept this as normal. You know, the Pivot podcast brought up the reality of what RFK Jr. is actually about when it comes to his stance on vaccines.
You have an individual here who's not only anti-vaccine. If you were to list the greatest innovations in history, I think most thoughtful scientists from both sides of the political spectrum, vaccines would be near the top of the list. And the fact that we have now politicized it and have an individual with no science background spewing misinformation who seems to be committed to reducing or creating skepticism around vaccines. And then something that came out yesterday from Senator Warren was that he is being paid to find people to sue Gardasil, an HPV vaccine that so far has shown to reduce cervical cancer in women by 90%. I don't know if either of you have known anyone with cervical cancer. I have. My God, we have something that can prevent 9 out of 10 times this vicious, awful disease. And we have the head of HHS being paid to try and discourage and financially damage that miracle. This guy has no business at HHS. He is probably the most dangerous of the nominees in terms of what it could mean long-term without attribution, where in 10 years we wake up and go, oh, cervical cancer is back, and reverse engineer it to this individual who is blatantly, repeatedly anti-vaccine. I think this is awful.